It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 19, printed in Part B of House Report 118-559. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 19, printed in Part B of House Report number 118-559, offered by Ms. Greene of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1316, the gentlewoman from Georgia, Ms. Greene, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment would ensure that no additional funding is appropriated for Ukraine through the State Department. To date, Congress has appropriated $174.2 billion in emergency supplemental funding. Of this amount, about $58 billion, which is 33%, has been provided through the Department of State and USAID. And there is virtually no oversight to tell the American people how much of their money is going where. We know the money goes to humanitarian and economic assistance and other non-military assistance, but there is much fraud and abuse suspected and widely reported. The Economic Support Fund for Ukraine's government goes toward providing food, energy, and healthcare services for the people of Ukraine. It is also used to counter Russian disinformation and supporting small and medium-sized agro-businesses and natural gas purchases by Ukraine. According to some reports, Ukraine has actually been purchasing Russian natural gas from third parties during the war. It seems counterintuitive for the U.S. to sanction Russian oil and then send taxpayer dollars to Ukraine, only for them to turn around and use the money to buy Russian oil. USAID provides direct budget support to the Ukrainian government through 3 trust funds: the Multi-Donor Trust Fund, the Single Donor Trust Fund, and public expenditures for administrative capacity endurance. This budget support funds the salaries of healthcare workers, first responders, school employees, and assistance for pensioners and internally displaced persons in Ukraine. While our southern border is being invaded daily, Joe Biden cares more about protecting the borders of Ukraine than the country he swore to protect. About half of Americans think the U.S. is spending too much money helping Ukraine, according to the most recent AP poll. According to the recent CBS poll, over 60% of Republicans do not support additional aid to Ukraine, and even 1 in 4 Democrats don't support it anymore. After all, the American people are over $34.5 trillion in debt. But Joe Biden doesn't care about what Americans on either side of the political spectrum think. Joe Biden and his family have profited so much off of Ukraine's corruption that he must think it's only fair to return the favor. It is truly disturbing to watch American taxpayer dollars go down the drain, or actually, should we say, in foreigners' pockets for foreign purposes that are not our own. But President Biden is beholden to a foreign government. My amendment will ensure that no American taxpayer money is sent to continue an endless failed war in that corrupt country, which is murdering an unknown amount of Ukrainian men. And I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of my amendment, and I reserve the remainder of my time. I reserve my time, Mr. Speaker.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in strong opposition to this amendment. Russia's brutal and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is not just a threat to Ukraine and its neighbors, but to the world. If Russia succeeds in its aggression, other unprovoked attacks are inevitable. Ukraine's democracy is being undermined every single day. Entire cities have been demolished, women and girls are being sexually abused by Russian soldiers, and children kidnapped. Hospitals and schools, which should be safe havens, are being intentionally attacked. Thousands of innocent children and their families have been brutally murdered. Millions of Ukrainians have been forced to flee their country. Now, as I said earlier, I have visited Ukraine, and I immediately recognized the love of the Ukrainian people for their country and their democracy. Since the war broke out, I've met with Ukrainians in Poland to hear firsthand the dire situation that they face amidst Russian aggression. I've talked with civil society organizations funded by the United States who, facing danger and violence, are supporting refugees, vulnerable people, women, and children. I was deeply moved by their stories and their commitment. Colleagues, we must continue to ensure that Ukraine has the funding and support it needs to defend itself and that vulnerable people continue to receive life-saving assistance. I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from California reserves. The gentlewoman from Georgia is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentlewoman has 1 minute and 1/2 remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hearing my colleague across the aisle talking about the rape and murder of women, I'd like to remind everyone that American women and children are being raped and murdered by illegal alien monsters that the Biden administration is allowing into the country, releasing into our country, paying for them to be travel through buses, planes, to all 50 states. And if this United States House of Representatives should care about any women and girls and children being raped and murdered, it should be American women, girls, and children. But this body cares most about Ukraine. I would like to remind everyone that just recently a Ukrainian group called Texty published a list of Ukrainian enemies that includes almost 400 Americans, including Republican U.S. lawmakers, conservative influencers, and media groups, and anti-war activists. This group receives money from the U.S. State Department through a program called Tech Camp. So the State Department is funding a group called Texty that has published a Ukrainian, basically a kill list, and that involves Americans and lawmakers and conservative influencers and media groups. Unbelievable that American taxpayers would be used for this. This is outrageous, Mr. Speaker. I asked my colleagues, I asked the House to vote in favor of my amendment, and I yield. Thank you.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, support for Ukraine is in the interests of the United States. Also, we have to deplore women being raped and children being kidnapped anywhere in the world, including in Ukraine. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Georgia seek recognition?
I ask for the recorded vote, please.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on this amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Georgia will be postponed.